Over the years, ESPN, they've been known for some pretty awful takes and terrible rankings. And when it comes to the NBA, one of their annual traditions is doing an NBA Top 100 list. And virtually every year, the list is complete garbage. If I really broke down this list, it would take me close to 5 hours. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on the top 20, really break it down, and show why ESPN's list, once again, is complete and utter garbage. So getting to the top 20, looking at our first 5 players, at number 20, we have Anthony Davis, 19, Bradley Beal, 18, Rudy Gobert, 17, Jimmy Butler, and 16, Trae Young. And first off, looking at Anthony Davis, having him number 20 is always due to injuries and not being healthy. As last year AD didn't play half the season, and the past 2 years has only played 76 games. And putting injuries aside, when AD is on the court and healthy, his overall play has fallen off a cliff these past 2 years. Collectively, only averaging 22.5 points, on sub 25% from 3, and his overall record is a pitiful 40-36. Now, looking at number 19, when I saw Bradley Beal this high, I was a little surprised, as DeMar DeRozan, Donovan Mitchell, and especially Jaylen Brown all had vastly better and more successful 2022 seasons. And looking more in depth at Beal, it's really hard to say he is a winning player at this point in his career. As in Washington, he doesn't have much help, but his overall stats and numbers translate to very little wins. As Washington once again missed the playoffs and failed to win a playoff series for the 6th straight year with Bradley Beal at the helm. Now, looking at number 18, I was once again pretty surprised, as Rudy Gobert cracked the top 20. And if you guys know me, when it comes to Gobert, I am not a big fan. And on my own personal list, he would not be in the top 20, let alone the top 25. As when it comes to playoffs, year in and year out, Gobert's playstyle is heavily limited in the big time moments, offensively as well as defensively. If you want to see Exhibit A of that, look at the Clippers series from 2 years ago or this past year versus the Dallas Mavericks. Now, looking at our last 2 spots, at number 17, we have Jimmy Butler, and number 16, Trae Young. First off, I think both these players should be higher. I think Jimmy at least 5 spots higher, and Trae probably 2 or 3. And Jimmy not cracking top 15 after the playoffs he had, I think is a pretty bold take. As in the first round, he outplayed Trae Young, locked him down, had a great series. In the second round, beat James Harden, who ESPN ranked 11th, and the conference finals went toe-to-toe with Brown and Tatum and the best defensive team in the entire NBA. And versus Boston in that series, he put up some pretty eye-popping stats, having 47 points, 41, as well as 35, and was 1 shot away from making the NBA Finals for the 2nd time in 3 years. Now, getting to the top 15, at number 15, you have Paul George, number 14, Dame Lillard, number 13, Cat, number 12, Kawhi, and number 11, James Harden. And looking at 15 and 14, you have both Dame and PG, debatably top 10 players, when healthy. And for both these guys last year, they were in pretty similar spots, as PG only played 31 games and missed the playoffs, and Dame Lillard only played 29 and missed the playoffs for the first time since 2013. Looking at their individual play, they definitely had pretty impressive years, but for PG and Dame standards, it definitely wasn't their best. And looking at both these guys for 2023, I expect big bounce back seasons and much improved play. And when it's all said and done, I think one of these two is a borderline top 10 player, maybe 11 or even 12. Now, looking at number 13, you have Karl Anthony Towns, one of the biggest shockers out of this entire list. And I mean no disrespect, but looking at Cat, I really never saw him as a guy who had the it factor as an NBA superstar. He's definitely very talented, a great player, he can shoot from deep, and his overall offensive game is pretty versatile. But the one piece you're looking for, the fire, the dog, the alpha mentality, I never got that vibe from Cat. If he had some KG in him, he would easily be a top 10 player. And looking at number 12 ESPN, they had Kawhi Leonard, which I 100% understand, as last year Kawhi didn't play like a basketball and was hurt the entire season. Now, even with that being said, when Kawhi is on the court, even with one leg, I'm taking him over James Harden, who ESPN ranked at number 11. As James Harden last year's playoffs, I found absolutely pathetic. Versus Miami, he averaged 18.2 points per game on 41-36-94 splits with 4.8 turnovers. In Game 5, he had 14 points, and in Game 6, facing elimination, only had 11. This version of James Harden is not a top 15 player, and definitely not number 11 ahead of Kawhi Leonard. Now finally getting the top 10, at number 10, you had Devin Booker, number 9, Ja Morant, number 8, Kevin Durant, and number 7, Jason Tatum. And looking at Devin Booker first, saying he's top 10 doesn't even sound right. He's definitely very close on the edge, climbing the hill to get there, but at this point, he's simply not top 10. As last year in the second round, he was completely embarrassed and emasculated, specifically in the Game 7 with the Luka special. Now looking one spot up, you have Ja Morant, the 22-year-old phenom, who last year averaged 27 games, up 8 points in the previous year, as Memphis team were on an absolute tear. And when it came to the NBA playoffs for Ja, he definitely had some learning moments, but he had some games that were absolutely insane. In the first round versus Minnesota, he nearly averaged a 22-point triple-double despite not playing his best basketball. And versus Golden State, he averaged 38 a game, and in Game 2, scored 47 points. The ceiling for Ja Morant, if he's healthy, is a top 5 player, as offensively, he's dynamic, he's must-see TV, and very similar to Steph Curry, he's going to have one play every night where you shake your head and you're in absolute awe. It could be a dunk, a three-pointer, a buzzer beater, whatever it is Ja Morant, he can do it, and going forward, he'll 100% be a top 10 player. Now, looking at number 8 and number 7, you have Tatum as well as Kevin Durant. And as a Celtics fan and a big KD critic, come on guys, let's not do this. Jason Tatum is a great young player, and in last year's playoffs was fantastic until the NBA Finals. But as an individual player compared to Kevin Durant, Tatum at this point is not better. Once again, I'm a big KD critic, and even I have to acknowledge he had a fantastic year despite his playoff struggles. As many forget, he averaged 30 a game with virtually no consistency, as James Harden was the midnight buffet and Kyrie Irving was watching Alex Jones. And looking at one of KD's big rivals, at number 6 ESPN had LeBron James. And for me, I'm kind of conflicted with this placement, as with LeBron James as an individual player, he is definitely a top 5 guy. But last year, evaluating his season, specifically looking at defense and his impact on winning, it was not there like in past LeBron seasons. Yes, averaging 30 at age 37, it's unprecedented and very impressive. But compared to the top tier players, most of these guys have an impact on winning, at least on one of the court, if not two. If you have LeBron James top 5, number 4, even number 3, I 100% get that. But for my list, I think number 6 is definitely fair and pretty reasonable. Now, looking at our top 5, at number 5, you have the worst pick of this entire list, which is absolutely shameful from ESPN. As at number 5, they had Steph Curry, the 4-time champion and reigning Finals MVP. Last year, Steph checked every single box you look for in an all-time great player. He was consistent, he came through when it mattered most, in the finals he was fearless, and through the entire season elevated his team and raised their ceiling. Offensively speaking, what one player brings to a team, Steph at this point is in the top 1%. And looking at the NBA Finals, he had the best series of his finals career. He averaged 31.2 points per game. In Game 1, he had 21 in the first quarter. Game 4 scored 43 in the Garden, and in Game 6 to close out game had 34, 7, and 7 on insane shooting splits. How can a guy who leads his team to the NBA Finals, plays terrific, is clutch, hits the big time shots, not be at minimum a top 3 player? And Steph being 5th on its own is a pretty bad choice. But looking at number 4, you have Joel Embiid, who always is a flameout in the playoffs. Granted, he had an MVP caliber season in the regular season, but per usual come playoff time, he didn't show up, he was hurt, and his team once again failed to make it past the second round for the 6th straight year. Contrast that with Steph Curry, who won the NBA Finals in his 4th championship, and there's no way you can have Embiid over him. Now, looking at number 3, they had Luka Doncic, which is understandable given his conference finals run. On my personal list, he's definitely top 5, but he's not ahead of Steph Curry. And looking at last year's playoffs, he was phenomenal, leading his team in points, assists, rebounds, as well as steals, and being 2nd in blocks. Offensively, there is very few players in NBA history who can carry a roster like Luka. Now, my one big critique of Doncic, of course, is the defensive end. As versus Golden State, he was definitely picked on and exploited by someone like Andrew Wiggins. The only big major hole in Luka's game is the defensive end of the floor. Granted, he has gotten better defensively, but is far from a great defender or even average defender. To be a top 3 player, 90% of the time, you have to be a positive or at least neutral on the defensive end. And pretty surprising to me, looking at number 2, ESPN had Nikola Jokic, one of the best offensive bigs and passing bigs in NBA history. And very similar to Luka, Jokic last year carried his team, leading them in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. And for Denver next year, when they're healthy, having Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., at bare minimum, they're going to be a top 5 seed. And Jokic finally will silence the doubters and make a deep playoff run with a healthy Nuggets squad. Now, last but not least, looking at number 1, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who at this point is the undisputed best player in the world. So with Giannis being number 1, that's our last player, and the end of ESPN's top 20. My major gripes with this list are Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Jimmy being way too low. And guys like Kat, Bradley Beal, James Harden, even Tatum being a tad too high. And looking at my own list, I'd try to remain consistent, looking at playoff success, overall play, individual greatness, and elevation of your own team. I had Giannis number 1, Curry number 2, KD number 3, Jokic 4, Luka 5, LeBron 6, 7 Embiid, Kawhi with an asterisk 8, number 9 Tatum, and number 10 Jimmy. Let me know what you guys think of my top 10 list. Is it worse than ESPN's? Is it better? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.